Are you gonna start?
Okay.
What now?
Oh, no, never mind. Sorry.
Okay, we're going. We are on the air. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Geezerology. I'm Scott. That's Bob over there. And there's something different this week. I'm not quite sure. Something looks a little weird. Bob, do you know what's going on?
Yeah, we have a millennial who's joining us today. This happens to be my daughter, Marissa. And are you number one daughter or number two? I can't remember.
Well, I mean, in terms of birth, I'm number two, but in terms of like order of excitement, I'm definitely number one.
Marissa has a twin named Morgan, and they're separated by a couple minutes of birth, and I can't remember which one was first. So she's the number two daughter.
Well, I like to build on the fact that I'm an intellectual, and I needed that alone time. So that's why she's first.
So this is not just for geezers. We're going to allow young females into the mix. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Let's get a little diversity going here. Okay, last week I told you about a few of my favorite live albums, and one of them got Bob's curiosity up a little bit, and so he decided he'd never heard it before, so he's going to listen to it this week, and he wants to tell us what his reaction was to Lou Reed's Rock and Roll Animal.
All right. Well, Scott, this is probably going to please you, but I had a really positive reaction to that. Much more my style of music. I like the twin guitar work. They did some more straight ahead rock and roll with the music. So yeah, I really liked it. Much more into my wheelhouse, I guess, to borrow one of your phrases. So I was very impressed with it. And the only negative thing on it, I wish Reed was a little bit better singer, but I really liked the music on it. And one thing I noticed is that when I listened to it off of Apple Music, that there were several other live recordings that were there, and I read the descriptions of them, and it seems like he changed up his style quite a bit over the years and presented his music in several different varieties. So, but this one I really liked. So,
he was constantly changing his style. He would come back to the basic 3-chord rock and roll every now and then, but he was always doing different things. What makes this such a good live album, a catalog album, in my opinion, is that this is the only time he's ever done that loud guitar blast sort of arena rock and roll.
And I think it actually complemented the songs very, very well. And I think it was a really nice mixture. And as I've said many times, I've always liked Reed's songs, just never cared much for the delivery. And this was much more into, where I normally come from.
This is the third different version of Sweet Jane you've heard now. Which one's your favorite so far?
I would say this one.
This one, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. This one blues. This is the one that put Sweet Jane on the map. Yeah, he'd gotten some radio play off the loaded version, but this one put him on the map. Okay, well, I'm glad you heard it. I'm going to make you a Lou Reed devotee. Yeah.
We got a long ways to go there.
We've taken 2 steps in that direction, and both of them have worked. We'll think about what the third step is next.
Okay. Baby steps.
All right. Marissa, turn your sound on and tell us.
Yeah, sorry, my dog's on a bone. I didn't want it to bother the sound.
Don't worry about it. I'll edit that out and post-process it. Okay.
Okay.
So Marissa, you told us that you had a couple of comments that you wanted to make on what's been going on with Geezerology.
Yeah, so I was looking on your website, and I saw a question, an observation I had for you, Scott, to start off is I have noticed this like beautiful imagery in every single post that you put to an album or an idea, and I've noticed a trend of sorts here. And because like my dad told me about the website, I'm like, okay, cool, Dad, you and your friend are like talking about music. That's neat. But what I was reading last night, there was your post about baseball, And I had pulled up on my computer here the specific post, but you had talked about how baseball, like how you were reminiscing on this feeling, and as this story progressed or this post progressed, I had this, like you had like this forget what you had said, nostalgic maybe, like feeling, and then watching the video of the that feeling that you were describing really was like insightful, and I was like, wow, I really like this. I can't wait to have a conversation with you, Scott, because you put like a feeling of what you love in terms of baseball and like put that into a post, and I was really blown away by it, and I really enjoyed it. And listening to that YouTube video, like, and like understanding where these guys were like coming from, you told the story, and then I listened to the song and it made me really excited. So I guess the question that I had, apart from the observation of your posts, is what is your idea of wanting to put those ideas into the world? Does that make sense? Like, are you wanting to reminisce on albums that you and artists that you have enjoyed over the past, and wanting to now let other people know about that? Or what is your goal there when you're writing?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
You're asking about sort of my overarching idea for the blog. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I guess for sure. Because yeah.
By the way, it's at you can check it out at Geezerology.com. So everybody go there and read our things. No, my whole idea to start this with was to basically just write about the music that I've liked over the years. You know, talk about, you know, do some nostalgia about things that I listened to 50 years ago. Try to understand, or make my readers understand, why it is that I like a particular piece of music. You know, what is it about a particular, and mostly I write about albums. I don't really deal with just individual songs or things, but mostly my wheelhouses are albums or album listens. And I just, my whole idea is just to try to make people understand why I like this particular album, or what is it that speaks to me about this. I also want to, part of it is a self-discovery thing too, because a lot of these things that I'm writing are things that I've never really thought about, but I start thinking about them because I want to write something. So I have to start thinking, well, what is there that makes me want to write about this? And it helps me kind of understand a lot of things about myself and about the music I'm listening to. I certainly appreciate that you appreciate that, because you're telling me that that what I'm trying to do, I'm being rather successful at it.
That's so good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I found it very interesting. My dad and I had spoke on it briefly, like when we were talking, but reading your posts and watching your videos on YouTube, knowing that like you and my father really come from a generation and that value the sense of an album, right? A collective thought from an artist or people. And so when my dad had given me an album, I really wanted to sit down and like try to understand that from your guys' viewpoint, because I came from a generation where we illegally like made playlists to put on our iPods, you know, from multiple artists, and then put playlists together. And we would just be like, well, like we just went through a breakup. How many songs can we put together in this CD or this playlist to like fit that feeling? And I never really understood the gravity of what my dad was speaking on for the last 20 some years, of what the importance of an album is, that these people, like an artist is not just a single song or a single thought. So I'm really excited about your guys'.
That's how I look at it. And part of it too was that part of my thinking was that I wanted to hopefully reach somebody of your generation or whatever, who don't know some of this music that we used to love, and try to explain to you and get you guys on board with, hey, there might be something here that's worth listening to. And like I said, my whole approach is I see an album as a work of art. You know, an individual song, yeah, I mean that's a work of art too, but that's so it's so micro. Like an individual song doesn't really tell you a whole lot about where somebody's coming from. When you listen,
like a sentence.
yeah, it's like a sentence, right.
Yeah.
And listening to an album is more like reading a short story or a novel.
Yeah.
I guess a double album would be a novel.
Yeah,
Rather than be a
absolutely. It
short
takes you
story.
on a journey.
But
for
you,
sure.
but you know, it's the bigger the sample size, the more of an idea you get of where they're coming from. You know, and that goes into when I was talking about live albums, is as I never was a big fan of live albums of the type that all the live albums were just people going up on stage and replicating the songs that they've already played on a studio album that we already know about. There are certain live albums, like the 3 I talked about last week, that are that are designed specifically to be a statement to themselves. Not a whole lot of live albums are that way. Anything else, Marissa?
One more. I kind of had this.
Okay.
I just wanted to just real fast to say something about my dad, because he's my dad, and I was reading some of his as well. And I am, like we had just mentioned, from the generation of single songs and our single idea. And I grew up a very listening to, if it was a secular song, my mom was like, I don't want you to listen to that. So I almost had to imagine a way that this could like help me as a person, like this song. And so I've always imagined a song very vividly. And when I was reading my dad's post, The Dark Side of Nantucket, and like how he had or Dad, you're right here, how you had written that. And I really love your imagery. Yes.
Yeah, I am here, Marissa.
I know, I'm so sorry. But when I was reading that, I got a sense of your excitement as well, with wanting to share your thoughts on an idea and part of music. So I guess the question I had for you, aside from that observation, is that what is it that you are most excited about with your trying to articulate that, like in such a way that, like, you know, like The Dark Side of Nantucket, I'm like, okay, like what is that about? And then like wanting to listen to these lyrics and wanting to listen to these chord progressions and like seeing what it is about that. So like, can you speak into that?
Sure. I approach music probably a little differently than a lot of people. First off, instrumental stuff usually just bores me to death. I'm a lyrics guy too, and I always want to know what a song means, what was the inspiration behind it, what were the circumstances of the author creating it. So I always like to dig for what they call the rest of the story. And that fascinates me almost as much as the original material. So yeah, I'm a words guy, you know, and I'm a pseudo writer, so I always want to delve into the meanings of things, and I love researching. So, you know, I start digging, and I learn one thing, and then I learn another thing, and another thing, and my head gets filled with all this trivial information. So, but that's where I come from. So I always want to share, hey, guess what I learned about this? So that's kind of where I come from.
I get a sense that what I'm excited about learning a piece of music is learning what's between, going back to the days of vinyl for the metaphor, but learning what's between the grooves. I think Bob tends more towards wanting to know the story behind the song. Is that, do you find that accurate? I mean, I mean, this is nothing I've ever, I mean, this doesn't come from years of knowing you and you know, living with you when we were kids or anything like that. This just comes since we started reading the blog. It seems to me that what you're writing about are the stories behind the songs. Is that, and that's what interests you?
Yeah, and in journalism, we had the 5 W's and the H: who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Yeah.
And oftentimes the why interests me more than anything else. And I think also the why tends to be the most important part of the story. Why is this occurring? Why did it happen? And so that's where I come from a lot. I want to know, why was this song created? Why was this music created? Why was the person inspired to do it? So I like, as far as the writing on the blog, there are times when I like to dig in. I enjoy digging into the why of stuff, and I think it adds to me anyway. It adds an element. And maybe it's just my weird mind.
No, that's fair. That's just a different approach and a different appreciation. I'm one. I like to hear what's there and make my own judgments about what's there. And once I get involved in that piece of work, then I'll start going and saying, well, what led up to this, yada yada yada. But that's usually the last thing. Okay, well, let's go ahead. We can have another talk about this at some point, but let's go ahead and do what we came here for.
All right.
Bob has asked Marissa to listen to an old early album.
Oh, we lost her.
From our youth. Oh, where did we go? Oh,
I had to get her.
there we go. We're good. Marissa had just been introduced to Melanie's album "Candles in the Rain," and I'm going to turn it over to Bob since he set this up. So, Bob, take it away. Tell us about this album and take it from there.
Alrighty. Okay, so Melanie Sofka is a singer-songwriter originally from the New York area. Candles in the Rain was her third album, released in 1970. It gave her her first top 10 single with Lay Down, subtitled Candles in the Rain. The title song to the album reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. All original songs except for covers of James Taylor's Carolina in My Mind and Ruby Tuesday by the Rolling Stones. She also did the arrangement of an A.A. Milne poem called Alexander Beetle. And Milne was, of course, the creator of Winnie the Pooh. And she also had another minor hit with What Have They Done to My Song, Ma, which went to 96. Melanie is still with us, and she did a whole bunch of albums. Her initial career kicked off in Europe. And when she did this album, she gained a following due to an exposure at a rather significant event, which helped her career tremendously. But anyway, I thought of Marissa, and I was thinking about what would maybe interest her. And I thought this might be a good album to start with this series. And there may be something on here she could relate to. So Marissa, I'm going to turn it over to you now, and you tell us what you thought. And then I'm going to come back a little bit later and maybe give you some information that you may not know. Okay? It's all yours, hon.
Okay. So I was really excited to get this record. One, because I've never put a record on my own ever before. So I've always my dad's always done that. I've had this record player of his for years. I've never used it other than just aesthetic value. So I was really excited to try it.
You had to have Dad show you how to use a turntable?
Well, I actually watched a YouTube video, and not even gonna lie, I didn't know where it started, if it was going in or out. It was a process. But my son and I got to do it together, and it was a good time. And I really enjoyed listening to her. I am a musician myself, so being able to hear a soft voice and a guitar and listening on a record player, which is something I never got to do. And I also had mentioned, Scott, that my dad had talked about how this it's an artwork, and being able to sit and look at the album and listen to the music. That's what I did, and I really enjoyed it. And Candles in the Rain was a song that I was intrigued by. One, just because, it's on the album cover and I identify singles. So I'm like, okay, this is what the album's about, right? And I had done a little bit more research on her and watched a YouTube video of her just recently, but also watched a video of her in an interview in the 70s and talking about the Candles in the Rain and why she wrote the song. And I'm much like my dad and wanting to know the story behind it. And I really enjoyed Look What They've Done to my song, Mom. I really enjoyed that as well. So it was a really good starting point, Dad. I don't know. I'm not as intellectually inclined as you or my dad, so I don't have much of those big words to share.
Had you ever heard anything about her before? Have you ever heard Candles in the Rain before, or Lay Down, or no song?
I haven't heard anything at all. This is the first time I ever got a chance to listen to her, for sure.
I listened. I looked for it. I wanted to listen to this album, because I'd heard when I was a kid, when I was in high school, these came out a long time ago. Lay Down, Candles in the Rain. I knew that song. I knew What Have They Done to My Song, Ma. Brand New Key, which was their biggest hit, which I think is on the next album or two albums after that. So, but I knew those songs by her big hits from back in the day. But I wanted to listen to this album just so I know what you're talking about when you talked about it. And I couldn't find this album. She had a long. I was surprised to learn that she's still recording. She's been around forever, and she's got a discography as long as my arm. And I think her most recent album came out like 4 years ago. But this particular album is not on any of the streaming services.
It's not on Apple Music.
So it's not on Apple Music either. I checked Spotify, Pandora. I checked and I don't have a copy of it, so I didn't get to listen to it. So what I was able to do, I went back, and this was her third album. I listened to her first two albums. I forget the names of them now. But her first, I listened to the second one first, which is self-titled, and then last night I listened to the first one. I really like this stuff. It wasn't anything like I was expecting. I just thought it was just going to be somebody just playing folk tunes and on a guitar and being all hippy dippy and everything. But she's really different. These first two albums, anyway. I don't know about this particular album, but she's got a really distinctively odd voice and delivery with her vocals and the music. And she just plays the guitar. I think she probably had a producer who put together orchestral arrangements and stuff, but it's just not acoustic folk, which is what I was expecting. She's stylistically on those first two albums, she was all over the place, playing a little rock, playing a little folk, playing a little old big band standards sort of things. I was really surprised. It certainly made me want to dive into her discography a little further, because it's not at all anything I was expecting. And I don't, and this again is what I was saying. You don't really get a good sense of somebody listening to just one or two songs, which is what for 50 years, that's what I knew Melanie. I keep trying to say Melania.
Oh, you got a thing for Mrs. Trump. You've been surfing those pictures of her on the internet?
But I didn't. I had no idea. I've known these 3 or 4 songs from her for 50 years. I had no idea what she was all about until I listened to these two albums. It gave me a whole different perspective of what she was all about. So, if you've never heard any of her, I don't know about her later ones, but her first couple of albums, and hopefully this one I'll be able to get my hands on someday. You should check it out.
Yeah, she's a varied artist, and she has one album called The Four Sides of Melanie, and it's a double album set. And each side reflects a different aspect of the kind of stuff that she does. So yeah, she's pretty varied. You have anything else you want to say about the music, Marissa?
No.
No? Okay. Well, let me tell you then why I picked this album for you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. First off, you're a guitarist and a singer-songwriter. So I thought you might identify with another female singer-songwriter. And I don't know how deeply you researched into her background, but the title song, Candles in the Rain, she wrote after performing at Woodstock. And it was raining when she was performing. And at the end of her set, the sun came out and people started lighting candles and matches and lighters and stuff in the audience. And that inspired her to write that song because of the experience she had at Woodstock. She was only 22 when she performed there. And in fact, she was so young, her mom drove her to the concert site. And she was kind of unknown in the US at that time. She had a following in Europe, but not a strong one in the US. And once she was on the second Woodstock album, and that gave her a national exposure. And then so she wrote Candles in the Rain based on that experience from Woodstock. And I remember back on the 40th anniversary of Woodstock, how enraptured you were by that whole thing. And so I thought that might relate to you. And there's also that spiritual vibe to Candles in the Rain that it's got, because she was backed by the Edwin Hawkins Singers, and it was a black gospel choir, and they had a hit the year before with Oh Happy Day. So it's not a religious song, but it's definitely a spiritual song, and you're a spiritual type person, so I thought it might say something to you. And Candles in the Rain became kind of an anthem for those 60s and early 70s. And it's still used a lot today. It's used a lot on the Earth Day celebrations and things like that because, of the uplifting spirit of it. So that's why I picked the album. And I thought it would be a nice place to begin with you because it might fit into kind of who you are as a person. So that was my reason for picking it.
How did she get so big in Europe before here? Because I'm looking. I mean, she's an American. She's born in Queens.
That I don't know. I just from what I read,
just one of those things, huh? Yeah,
one of those things. And her the one of the songs that she performed at Woodstock, on losing the title of it anyway, had been a hit for her in Europe, and she had. She had a big following in the Netherlands and in France, I believe. So she had a couple hit singles in Europe, and in New York, she mainly performed, in coffee houses and things like that along the folk circuit. And when she was at Woodstock, she was there on that first day for what they called the folk performers. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but she was one of only 3 solo female performers to be at Woodstock. And it was Joan Baez and Janis Joplin were the other 2.
Her discography, I just found her discography. There are 42 albums in her catalog. That includes, I don't separate these out, but I'm looking, that includes live albums and also compilations. But 42, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a lot. The most recent one here on this list is 2015, which is a live album. The last studio album is 2010, but I don't know if this is up to date. I don't know when this was compiled. There might have been one since then, but that surprised me. I thought she was somebody who kind of had her 15 minutes back in the early 70s, and then she went off and did whatever.
Yeah, and interestingly, her producer was her husband, and
yeah,
some odd years.
Yeah,
and he died suddenly of a heart attack a few years back. And interestingly, he was in a Best Buy store getting a new cell phone, and was talking to the clerk, and actually was talking about Melanie's performance at Woodstock when he suddenly said, I don't feel well, and went down and died of a heart attack. And then the story goes that Melanie had a chance to meet with the clerk from Best Buy, and he told her, yeah, your husband was talking about you, when he died. So kind of a uplifting but sad story at the same time. But I think they were married for 47 years, something like that. Yeah.
Apparently she, in 1977, just something I just saw, in 1976, apparently she had she recorded an album that was thought of as a comeback, which got some really good critical reviews and things like that. And it was overseen by Ahmet Ertegun. This guy is everywhere. It's Ahmet Ertegun, the guy who was head of who was the owner of Atlantic Records. It's like every time we talk about something, Ahmet Ertegun is in that story somewhere. That's unbelievable. I wish I could listen to that album. I may have to go to Amazon and actually buy this thing. God, we don't do that anymore. I actually have to buy a CD to listen to this album. What's this world coming to?
Well, it's interesting. When I took this album over to Marissa's place to let her listen to it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Marissa, but I think this is the only piece of physical music that you have in your home, isn't it?
That is correct.
Yeah.
It's a different world, as Silvio Dante used to say. That's a different world.
When I was talking to her about doing this, and we said, we'll let this be ladies' choice the first time we do this. And I said, yeah, Marissa, I can find an album for you to listen to. Or she said, or Dad, I can find songs for you to listen to. And we immediately both clicked in on how different our worlds are. I'm talking albums and she's talking songs.
Right.
So, yeah. And then I know you mentioned that earlier, but I also remember she and her sister would drive me crazy for millions of reasons. But if we'd be in the car and the radio was on, a song would come on and these kids would give it like 10 seconds and go, and they're looking for another station. And I'm like, will you just stop and give this song a chance?
Yeah, it's a different way of listening.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just thinking about when I was trying to mentally prepare for talking with you and my dad today. I was thinking about the differences, right? My dad will drive anywhere with a silent car, and I can't drive anywhere without music on, right? And I used to pride myself on the fact that I love music and I have to have it around me all the time, right? And then I realized while thinking about this, how different it was to just monotonely listen to songs versus experiencing and absorbing them. Right. And I was like, man, my dad's so boring. He can't drive in a car. He doesn't he'll just sit down and read a book or just sit down and listen to music. That's so boring. And I never realized really until I'm just preparing, thinking about this. I'm like, man, actually it's just so drastically different. The passion, the intent behind that, where I'm just putting in music just to have it in my background.
Right.
You and my dad are listen to this album, so I'm really.
That's a lot that's really missing. With you having a physical LP in your hand. I mean, it was a little bit with CDs with that, but with those albums, those album covers. I mean, we would sit down. You just sit down, nobody else in the room. You just sit down and put on that record, and you have that album cover there, and you would just sit and read everything that's on that album cover while you're listening to that song over and over and over and over again. And that's something that's missing now. And I miss it. I miss it. I still have my collection of albums on my shelf upstairs, but they've been sitting there collecting dust for 20 years. I have a record player, but it's just too much of a pain in the butt to get up and put the album on and da-da-da. It's a heck of a lot easier just to tell Google to throw the album off of Spotify and have it run through the house.
Experience though, listening to the song, putting a record on, I've never experienced that. Right. I'm like, wow, this is so nutty, and but it's not because you guys you live for that experience of
right. The thing I miss now about listening to music is that I don't I don't recognize song titles anymore. I'll hear a song that's like I've known this song for 20 years. I have no idea what the title of the song is because I'm not sitting here reading the credits on the album cover. And I have no idea who wrote the song. I have no idea who the producer was on this album. I have no idea who's playing that guitar solo. You know, and that's the kind of stuff you used to get from reading those album covers, front to back and inside out, you know, while you're listening to that.
Right.
I remember going into record stores and thumbing through albums and
Oh, yeah.
seeing something.
Yeah.
Oh man, Jimi Hendrix produced this band called Cat Mother and the All Night Newsboys. Yeah, I'm going to give that a chance.
Exactly.
And I love Hendrix.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
or you'd see a couple guest musicians on there that you really liked. And
And of course, it's a buy an album, and you know you have no idea what's inside it or anything like that. But I just buy an album because that's really a cool looking cover.
exactly.
We'll do that. We'll do that. I made a lot of covers that way. That's how I.
Now there's an old German science. There's an old German silent movie called Metropolis that I just love. And there's a group called Bebop Deluxe, and they released a live album. And on the cover of the album is a scene from the movie Metropolis. And that intrigued me so much that I bought the album, not knowing a single thing about Bebop Deluxe.
Right.
But it was just because of the album.
Right.
And I had my wife read the piece that I wrote about Nantucket Sleigh Ride. And she was looking at, you know, the pictures of the album that I put up, and she was commenting on the artwork. So I pulled the album out so she could see it, you know, in the larger thing. And the artwork on this is just awesome. It's beautiful. And my wife, you know, spent a long time just going over the artwork on this thing because it intrigued her so much.
Right.
And so there's a lot, you know, and we had back in the day, you know, an entire industry of photographers and artists and stuff, you know, who would create the concepts for these covers.
Oh yeah. Oh, that became famous too. Roger Dean, who drew all those covers back in the 70s. Hypnosis, who designed all those covers back in the 70s. You knew who these people were. Henry Dilfer, who was a photographer who shot all the Doors album covers and Crosby, Stills, Nash album covers. Yeah, yeah. You knew who these people were. Marissa, are you going to do this again with us?
I would love to.
This is fun. This is fun. We'll get you in here as much whenever you want to come in. Just come on in and talk about it. We next week. By the way, before I forget, go to Geezerology.com and read Bob's piece on Nantucket Sleigh Ride. It's a strange little background on this song. Weird things going on. Bob's good for that. Go read some of Bob's stuff on there. He'll tell you some things that you never heard of and never dreamt could ever happen.
So like, if I can interrupt, Nantucket Sleigh Ride is a great example. That's a 50-year-old song. Okay. And I heard it when I was a teenager and I loved it. You know, I mean, I liked the music and all that, but I had no idea what the heck a Nantucket Sleigh Ride was. I mean, I didn't, you know, and it wasn't until the advent of the internet and stuff that I learned that a Nantucket Sleigh Ride is what happens when you harpoon a whale and the whale goes flying off and the boat's going across the ocean. That's a Nantucket Sleigh Ride. So that one thing led to another, for me to learn all of the stuff about the background of the song. And that kind of fascinates me, you know. So I liked the song originally because I liked the way it sounded, but I had no flipping idea what it meant, you know, and now I do.
Read all about it at Geezerology.com. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Marissa. This is a great little discussion. We'll be back next week. I believe next week on our calendar, Bob is going to tell us about his first listen to Heart Attack and Vine by Tom Waits. Another guy I've been trying to push Bob into having a listen to. Marissa, come back if you'd like next week. We'll figure out a time and we'll let you know. And are you working on anything, Bob, for Geezerology.com? Anything in the works?
Got several things already written.
Okay,
that I can post at any time.
Nothing imminent right now. Okay. Yeah, I'll probably start my Lou Reed. I gave you a preview last week. I'll probably get the first one. I'm gonna write about his essential albums. That'll be my next post. That'll be sometime this week, and we'll get that started. And a couple of other things that I have kicking around my brain. Marissa, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, so nice to meet you.
Come on back and have a conversation with me two old guys.
I would love it. Absolutely. I'll have my dad send me the album that you're trying to get him to listen to. Maybe that will work. It's magic on me as well.
It's Heart Attack and Vine by Tom Waits.
Okay.
Bob, set her up with that.
I will do that.
About it too.
I'm going to warn you, he's weird.
It's weird. It's different. That's what it's unique. It's different. It's unique.
It's weird.
Thanks, everybody. Geezerology.com. Read us there, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everybody.